You can't do this. This is our home, not your place. Heather's words echoed through the living room like a stinging slap. I stood frozen, the apartment documents trembling in my hands. My own son, Jason, stared at the floor, unable to defend me or even meet my gaze. My heart clenched, a vice tightening. 67 years. Never imagined I'd be treated like this. An inconvenience, disposable, after everything I'd given. Not my place. I whispered it, more to myself than to them. I looked around. The walls I'd helped them pick the paint. The kitchen where I'd cooked thousands of meals. The nursery where I'd spent sleepless nights rocking my grandchildren. The apartment I'd bought with the money from selling my own house. Not my place? You're probably wondering how it came to this. How a devoted grandma, who gave up everything for her family, found herself pushed out of her own grandchildren's lives. Let me tell you how it started. I'm Brenda, a retired teacher. I've been a widow for 15 years, ever since my Arthur left us so suddenly. A heart attack at 55. Our son Jason had just met Heather. I remember the day he brought her to meet me, just 3 months after the funeral. "Mom, this is Heather," Jason said with that new love sparkle in his eyes. Heather was pretty, with dark hair and bright, watchful eyes. She shook my hand firmly and even brought flowers. "It's so good to finally meet you, Brenda. Jason talks about you constantly." That day, I made the Sunday dinner Arthur had loved so much. Classic roasted chicken, fluffy rice, and my famous creamy potato salad Jason adored as a boy. Heather helped me in the kitchen, asking about the recipes, about what Jason was like growing up. "You have such a magic touch, Brenda," she'd said, watching me season the chicken. "I never knew my own grandmother, but I imagine she was just like you." Those words warmed my lonely heart. I'd always wanted a daughter, but God only gave me one son. Maybe Heather could fill that space. Their wedding happened 6 months later. A simple, yet beautiful ceremony. I sold some of the jewelry Arthur had given me to help with the party. "Mom, you didn't have to," Jason had said, but I insisted. "Your father would have wanted it this way." In the first few years, I visited the young couple once a week. I always brought some frozen meals for busy weeknights. Heather worked at a bank and Jason was starting his career in sales, traveling occasionally. Everything changed the day Ethan was born. I remember the phone call at 3 in the morning. "Mom." Jason's voice trembling. "He's here. It's a boy." I took a cab to the hospital, my heart overflowing with joy. When I got to the room, I saw Heather holding the tiny bundle, looking exhausted and terrified. "Brenda," she said, her voice choked. "I don't know what I'm doing." I sat beside her on the bed and adjusted the baby in her arms. "No one ever does at first, sweetie. We'll learn. Together." When they brought Ethan home, chaos set in. Jason had to travel just 2 weeks after Ethan's birth. "Important for my career, Mom," he'd said. And Heather was on the verge of a breakdown. The baby cried non-stop. She couldn't nurse. The house was a mess. "Brenda, please," she'd pleaded, calling me late one night. "Help me." I packed a small bag and temporarily moved into their apartment. For 3 months, that was my life. I'd take Ethan through the night so Heather could sleep. I prepared meals, taught her how to bathe him, how to decipher his cries, how to soothe colic. "I don't know what we'd do without you, Mom," Jason would say, home from a trip, giving me a quick, distracted hug before turning on the TV. When Ethan was almost 3, Heather got pregnant again. Chloe arrived that spring, Rosy cheeks, curious eyes. This time, they didn't even need to call. My bag was already packed. "You're an angel, Brenda," Heather would sigh as I rocked Chloe, freeing her to tend to Ethan. It was around that time that the apartment issue came up. I was still living in the house where I'd raised Jason, too big for a lone widow, and the stairs were starting to challenge my knees. "Sell your house, Mom. Buy a place near us. It'd help with the kids, and you wouldn't be alone." The idea made sense. The house held memories, but also loneliness. I sold it for a good price. It was in a prime, appreciating neighborhood. With that money, I bought the apartment they live in now. It was bigger than their previous one, with 3 bedrooms and a nice balcony. "It's better this way, Mom. You'll be close, and you'll still have a little left over to live comfortably," Jason had said as we signed the papers. The agreement was simple. The apartment remained in my name. They'd cover the mortgage. "It's fair, Mom. You put down the down payment, the largest chunk." For the first few months, payments were made religiously. Then, the excuses started. "Mom, this month's tight. Can I pay half?" "Mom, an investment came up. Can I skip this month?" "Mom, the car broke down. I'll make it up to you, I promise." After 10 payments, they simply stopped. I kept every receipt, every conversation. Not out of distrust, but out of old teacher's habit. Organization. My routine, meanwhile, split between my small rented apartment and theirs. I picked Ethan up from school, took Chloe to ballet, prepared dinners when Heather had late meetings, helped with homework. "Grandma, you make the best chocolate chip cookies," Ethan would declare, licking the spoon. "Grandma, tell the frog story again?" Chloe would beg, snuggled in my lap. Worth every penny not received, every sleepless night, every ache in my back from spending days bent over playing with them. But something shifted about a year ago. Heather got promoted at the bank, from account manager to regional manager. Her salary soared. New car, renovated kitchen, vacations. And little by little, my presence seemed less necessary, less welcome. "Brenda, we've hired a cleaning service twice a week. You don't need to worry about that." "Brenda, the kids are on a special diet. Best not bring those sweets." "Brenda, we've already got plans for Sunday. Maybe next week?" Small exclusions, accumulating. Heather started calling me Brenda instead of Mom or Mrs., my last name. Subtle, but I noticed the distance. Ethan, entering pre-adolescence, no longer ran to hug me. Hours in his room, lost in games. Chloe was still affectionate, but I caught Heather's glances when the girl snuggled into my lap. "Chloe, you're getting too big for that. Sit up straight," she'd snap. One Sunday afternoon, about 6 months ago, I arrived with a fresh-baked coffee cake. Mama's recipe. Heather looked at the cake as if I'd brought an insult. "Brenda, didn't I tell you the kids are avoiding sugar? Why do you insist on not listening?" "I'm sorry, dear. I thought a small treat wouldn't hurt." She sighed, a performance of profound patience. "The problem is you always think you know best. This is my home. These are my children." Jason was in the living room. Said nothing, just stared at his phone, pretending not to hear. That silence was a deeper cut than any words. I went home that day, the cake untouched, my heart heavy. For the first time, I felt like an intruder. I reduced my visits, waiting for invitations that rarely came. When I did go, the children had clear instructions. "Say hello to Grandma properly, Chloe. No jumping." "Ethan, turn off that game. Come give Grandma a hug." Mechanical hugs, superficial conversations. My role, a formal visitor. The money from my house sale, meant to secure my old age, had long since run out. The loans to Jason for the new car, the kitchen renovation, the Disney trip were never repaid. My teacher's pension barely covered rent, blood pressure, and arthritis medications. But I swallowed my pride. They were my family, after all. My only son, my precious grandchildren. Until that Thursday, a month ago. I'd knitted Chloe a wool sweater, pink with lilac details, colors she loved. I hadn't announced I was coming. A mistake, I realized later. When I entered with my key, I still had one, though I rarely used it. I heard Heather on the phone in the kitchen. "It's a nightmare, Sarah. She just shows up, unannounced, weighs in on everything. Jason doesn't have the guts to say anything because she bankrolled the apartment. But I'm at my limit." I stood paralyzed in the hallway, Chloe's sweater clutched to my chest. Bankrolled. The apartment. As if it were some casual contribution, not the sale of the house where I'd lived for decades, where I'd raised my son, where I held Arthur's memories. Heather saw me. Hung up the phone, embarrassed. But something shifted inside me right then. A veil lifted. I saw clearly what I'd become. A convenient crutch, used when needed, stored away when not. "Heather, we need to talk," I said, a calm I didn't know I possessed settling over me. "Brenda, not today. I have an online meeting in half an hour. It'll be quick. About this apartment." She paled. Called Jason from his office. When he walked in, I already had the property deed in my hand. I always kept it close. "Mom, what's going on?" Jason asked, rattled. I'm sick of being treated like an inconvenience in a house that's mine. "What do you mean, yours?" Heather cut in, incredulous. "We've been paying the mortgage for years." "You paid 10 payments out of 60, sweetheart. Every receipt is right here." The silence in the room was thick. Jason looked like a little boy caught with his hand in the cookie jar. "What do you want, Mom?" he finally managed. "Respect, or I'm selling this apartment and we divide the money fairly." That's when Heather exploded. "You can't do that! This is our home, not your place!" Those words, "not your place," struck me like a lightning bolt. 15 years of dedication, sleepless nights, my life savings poured into them, unconditional love, and I had no place. I looked at my son waiting. For what? A defense? An apology? He just averted his gaze, his hands fidgeting. Averting his gaze. "Mom, let's talk about this later. Calmly. You're upset." I walked out of that apartment. My apartment. Legs shaky, heartbroken. On the way home, tears blurred my vision. Not sadness, I realized. Anger. At myself for having been so blind for so long. That night I couldn't sleep a wink. I replayed every moment, every loan, every swallowed criticism to avoid conflict. And I made a decision that would change everything. The next morning I called a lawyer. But this was just the beginning. What happened next changed my life, and theirs, completely. And it made me understand. True love demands not just sacrifice, but the courage to say, enough. That morning, Mr. Miller's office, a middle-aged lawyer with kind eyes, felt daunting. I'd never needed a lawyer. Arthur handled all that, and after him, Jason took over. Funny how life throws you curveballs. "Brenda, the situation is clear," Mr. Miller explained, his eyes scanning my paperwork. "You are the legal owner. They've paid less than 20% of the total value. Legally, you can request them to vacate or propose a sale." "My grandkids?" I asked, my voice thin. "Can I be sure I'll still see them?" He adjusted his glasses, choosing his words. Unfortunately, there are no legal guarantees for grandparents in that regard. It will depend entirely on the relationship you maintain with your son and daughter-in-law. I left his office, the burden heavier still. I was risking Ethan and Chloe to reclaim my dignity. Was it worth it? That night, brewing chamomile tea, seeking sleep, I remembered a conversation with my mother, Mama, just before she passed. It was an autumn afternoon, over 20 years ago. Mama sat on the porch, her frail body wrapped in a shawl I'd knitted. "Brenda, come here," she called, patting the bench beside her. "I need to tell you something." I sat, uneasy at her serious tone. She took my hands, her fingers gnarled and cold. "Honey, when your father died, I was only 42. You and your brother, still kids, remember?" I nodded. Dad died in a factory accident, leaving Mama with 4 small children and a pile of debts. "Your Uncle Frank came to live with us, remember? Your father's brother. How could I forget? Uncle Frank, bitter, controlling. He turned our house into a military academy. He told me he was the man of the house, that I couldn't raise you on my own, that I needed his financial help." She paused, gazing at the horizon. "And I believed him. Let him take over everything. The house your father built, the pension, even your schooling. I remembered the hard years, the strict rules, how Mama seemed to shrink in his presence. For 10 years I bore his insults, his criticisms, his control. All because I believed it was best for you kids, that you needed a man in the house." She squeezed my hands. "Until the day he hit your brother David for coming home late, remember?" I remembered it perfectly. David was 16. Mama, always so submissive, transformed that night. She faced Uncle Frank like a lioness. That night I realized I'd sacrificed my dignity, believing it was love. But true love doesn't bow to humiliation, Brenda. Self-respect is also love for your children. They learn from us how they should be treated in the world. She wiped away a stubborn tear. "I kicked your uncle out that very night. We had it tough, yes. But we got our peace back, our respect, the joy in our home." Mama held my face in her hands. "Promise me you'll never confuse love with submission, Brenda. Promise me you'll never let anyone strip you of your dignity, not even the ones you love most." That memory, so vivid, brought tears to my eyes. I'd broken my promise to Mama, confused love with servitude, sacrifice with erasure. The next day, Jason called. "Mom, can we talk? I'm worried about you." I agreed to meet him at a coffee shop near my apartment. When I arrived, he was already there, looking tired, agitated. "Mom, what's going on? Heather said you threatened to evict us." I sat calmly, ordering tea before responding. "I didn't threaten anyone, son. I merely stated a fact. The apartment is in my name, and you've paid only a small portion." "But Mom, it was an agreement. You knew we'd struggle at the start with young kids." "The start was 10 months, Jason. After that came the loans never repaid. The money from my house sale, meant for my old age security, gone." He ran a hand through his hair, a habit since childhood whenever he was stressed. "Are you short on cash, Mom? Is that it? I can help. You didn't need lawyers." I took a sip of tea, buying time. "It's not just money, son. It's respect, acknowledgement. It's walking into that apartment without feeling like an intruder, hugging my grandkids without it feeling like a crime. You're overreacting. Heather just wants to raise the boys her way. And her way includes pushing me away? Belittling me? Making me feel like a burden after everything? Jason looked away, clearly uncomfortable. Like saying that's not my place? He fell silent. No defense for those words. Son, I sold my home. The house where you grew up, where you made memories with your father, to buy that apartment. I looked after your children as if they were my own. Gave you every dime I had when you needed it. And now I'm treated like an intruder. What do you want, exactly? He asked, a defensive edge to his voice. I want two options. Either you acknowledge that apartment is as much my home as yours, and you treat me with the respect I deserve, or we sell the place and divide the value proportionally. You can't be serious. It's our home, Mom. Where will we live? With your share, you can rent or put a down payment on another place. You both have good salaries now. Jason stood up, fuming. You're being selfish. Only thinking about yourself, not the kids. Those words hit me like a slap. I took a deep breath, remembering my promise to Mama. No, son. Selfish was using your mother when you needed her, then discarding her when she wasn't convenient. Selfish was taking my retirement money and never paying it back. Selfish is making me feel guilty for wanting what's mine by right. He walked out of the coffee shop without a goodbye, slamming the door. I went home, my heart heavy, but strangely lighter than I'd felt in years. In the following days, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Jason, Heather, even mutual friends trying to mediate, accusatory texts, tearful calls, veiled threats. You'll never see your grandkids if you keep this up. How could you do this to your own family? I thought you loved us. Every message stung, but I stood firm. Mr. Miller served them formal notice, giving them two options. Buy out my share, financially almost impossible for them, or agree to the sale. One rainy afternoon, 3 weeks after that coffee shop conversation, my doorbell rang. It was Chloe, soaking wet, alone. Grandma! She cried, throwing herself into my arms the moment I opened the door. Chloe, what are you doing here? How did you get here? Do your parents know you're here? I asked in a panic, pulling her inside, drying her wet hair with a towel. She shook her head, her eyes brimming. I took a bus? The lady helped me get off at the right stop. My heart sank. 9 years old, on a bus, by herself in the rain. Your parents must be frantic, Chloe. I need to call them now. No, Grandma, please, she pleaded, clutching my arm. They're fighting, all the time. Daddy yells at Mommy. Mommy cries. Ethan locks himself in his room. All because of the house. I sat, pulling her onto my lap. She was still small enough to snuggle there, despite Heather's protests that she was too big. Grandma, why don't you come to our house anymore? Why do you want to take our house? Mommy says we'll have to live somewhere horrible because of you. Every word a knife to the gut. How do you explain property, dignity, and respect to a 9-year-old? Chloe, sometimes grown-ups disagree about big things. It doesn't mean they don't love each other. But you still love me, right, Grandma? More than anything, sweetheart. Nothing will ever change that. I called Jason, who answered on the first ring, his voice practically shaking. Mom, Chloe's gone. We're frantic. She's here with me, son. Safe. Took a bus by herself. I heard his sigh of relief, followed by muffled shouts, probably yelling for Heather. I'm coming to get her now. Half an hour later, Jason pulled up, Heather right behind him. She rushed to Chloe, hugging her tight. Don't you ever do that again? Do you have any idea the danger you were in? Then, turning to me, her eyes narrowed, accusing. Why didn't you tell us immediately? Before I could even open my mouth, Chloe wriggled free from her mom's arms. "Don't yell at Grandma. I ran away. You guys are always fighting, talking bad about Grandma, saying we're going to lose the house." Jason knelt, eye level with his daughter. "Chloe, these are grown-up matters. You shouldn't have to worry about this." "But I do worry. I want Grandma to visit us again. I want you to stop fighting with Mommy and Daddy." A heavy silence fell. Heather looked at me, then at Jason, and finally at Chloe. "Let's go home, honey. We'll talk there." As they left, Chloe ran back and hugged me tight. "I love you, Grandma." "I love you too, sweetheart. Always." After they left, I collapsed onto the sofa, emotionally drained. That unexpected visit had stirred something deep. Seeing Chloe's distress, knowing the kids were caught in the middle of all this, it was devastating. That night, Jason texted, "Can we talk tomorrow? Just us." I agreed. The next day, he showed up at my apartment. He looked like he'd aged years in weeks. "Mom, we need to sort this out, for the kids' sake." I offered coffee, which he accepted mechanically. "I'm listening, son." He took a deep breath. "I talked to Heather. We recognize you're right about the apartment. Legally, it's yours. Morally, too, since it was bought with the money from your house." I stayed silent, waiting. "We can't buy out your share. Not even with a loan could we afford that amount now." "So you'll agree to sell?" He nodded, defeated. "We don't have a choice. But, Mom, the kids, they miss you." Ethan doesn't say it, but I can tell. And Chloe, well, you saw her yesterday. My heart ached. I miss them too, son. Every day. Would you forgive us? Would you still let us be a part of your life? I looked at my only son. The boy I'd raised alone after Arthur passed. The man who disappointed me so deeply. And I saw something I hadn't seen in a long time. Genuine regret. "Son, I never stopped loving you. Not for a second. But love can't exist without respect." "I know, Mom. And I promise that's gonna change." We hugged, both crying. A hug holding decades of love, months of heartache, and now, a tiny seed of hope. The following week, the apartment went on the market. Mr. Miller handled everything, ensuring my rights were respected. Jason and Heather started looking for a place to rent. One afternoon, I had an unexpected visitor. Heather, alone. "Can I come in, Brenda?" she asked, using the respectful tone from years ago. I invited her in, offered coffee. She accepted, hands trembling. "I came to apologize," she finally said, looking at the cup instead of at me. My behavior was unforgivable. I sat across from her, observing the woman I'd once considered almost a daughter. "What changed, Heather? What happened to bring us to this point?" She finally looked up, her eyes red from suppressed tears. "I guess success went to my head. The promotion, the money. I started to think I knew everything, that I was better than everyone. Better than you, who always stood by us." She paused, wiping a tear. "And maybe I was jealous of the love the kids have for you, of how easily you handled them. I always felt inadequate as a mother. That confession caught me off guard. Heather, always so confident, feeling inadequate? Honey, you're a wonderful mother. Different from me, yes, but no less capable. You were always so natural with them. I always had to try so hard." I took her hands, just like my own mother had done for me years ago. "Heather, being a mother doesn't come with a manual. Everyone does it their own way. My role was never to replace you, only to help." And I pushed you away out of pride and insecurity. I made Jason choose between you and me. I made the children suffer. We sat in silence for a few moments, the weight of unspoken words hanging between us. I can't change what happened with the apartment now, she said finally. But I would like you to stay present in the children's lives, in our lives. That's what I want most, Heather. When she left, I felt something finally start to heal. It wouldn't be easy or quick, but it was a start. The apartment sold in record time. The market was hot, the location prime. As promised, I divided the proceeds proportionally. My share was significant, allowing me to buy a small apartment for myself, right by the park, and still put away a good amount. With the rest, I opened 2 savings accounts. One for Ethan, one for Chloe, for when they turned 18. I didn't tell Jason or Heather about it. My surprise for my grandchildren down the road. Jason and Heather managed to rent a smaller apartment not far from mine. The move was tough on everyone, especially the kids who had to leave the rooms and school they knew. The day before the move, Jason called. "Mom, we're having trouble covering the moving expenses. The security deposit for the rent was higher than we expected. Could you lend us a little?" That familiar request made my heart clench. For a moment, I almost caved. The old habit of always helping, always giving in. Then I remembered my promise to Mama. I took a deep breath before answering. "Son, I love you. But no, I can't. This money is my place in the world now." Silence on the other end. Then, to my surprise, a calm response. "I understand, Mom. You're right. We'll figure it out." That simple answer meant more than any elaborate apology. It was the recognition of my right to say no. My right to take care of myself first. The following weeks were a time of adjustment. I started visiting the grandkids at their new apartment, always with explicit invitations from Heather. Ethan, initially distant, started to open up again, especially when he found out I had Netflix and let him pick the movies when he visited. Chloe was back to her affectionate self, running into my arms without hesitation. On one visit, she pulled me into her new bedroom, smaller but decorated with care. "Grandma, look what I saved," she said, pulling out the pink and purple sweater I'd knitted for her from a little box. Mommy wanted to donate it because it was too small, but I wouldn't let her. It's too special. I hugged her tight, my eyes welling. "You're too special too, sweetheart." One Sunday afternoon, about 2 months after the apartment sold, Heather invited me for lunch. When I arrived, the table was set with care, and a familiar aroma drifted from the kitchen. "I tried to make that roast chicken you used to make," Heather explained, a little embarrassed. "It's not quite the same, but..." "I'm sure it's delicious," I replied, genuinely touched. During lunch, we talked like we hadn't in years. About the kids' studies, about my new projects. I'd started a painting class for seniors at the community center. About their adjustments to the new home. When I was leaving, Jason walked me to the door. "Mom, I wanted to thank you." "For what, son?" "For teaching us an important lesson. About respect. About consequences. About self-worth." I smiled, thinking of Mama and the promise I'd finally kept. "Some lessons are hard, son, but necessary." Today, at 67, sitting on the balcony of my little apartment, a cup of tea in my hands, I watch the park where tomorrow I'll take Chloe to ride her bike. Ethan promised to come next weekend to teach me how to use my new smartphone. I don't know if Jason and Heather have completely forgiven me. I don't know if our relationship will ever be exactly what it was. But I do know this. Now there's respect, clear boundaries, a more mature, truer love. And I know with certainty I've found my place. A place that doesn't depend on the approval or needs of others. A place built with the dignity I almost lost, but recovered just in time. I didn't leave that house empty-handed. I walked away with my dignity. And I realized that, in the end, that was all I truly needed.